Every Christopher Nolan film exists in the same universe. This theory argues that from Following in 1998 through Oppenheimer in 2023, Nolan has been building one interconnected reality. Fans point to recurring elements like memory manipulation technology, characters obsessed with time, and the name Cobb appearing in both Inception and as inspiration for characters in other films. In The Prestige, Tesla's machine manipulates matter and consciousness. In Inception, technology manipulates dreams and consciousness. In Tenet, technology manipulates time itself. The theory suggests these represent different stages of the same technological evolution. Supporting evidence includes architectural similarities across films, repeated actor casting in thematically connected roles, and Nolan's admitted obsession with exploring the same philosophical questions. Whether literal or thematic, the shared universe theory reveals how Nolan's entire filmography functions as one extended meditation on memory, time, and reality itself. The spinning top at the end of Inception never falls, or we never see if it does. For over a decade, audiences have debated whether Cobb is still dreaming in the final scene. The most compelling evidence for reality is Cobb's wedding ring. Throughout the film, he wears it in dreams, but not in reality. And in the final scene, his hand is bare. Michael Caine, who played Miles, stated in interviews that Nolan told him his character only appears in reality, never in dreams, which many fans take as strong evidence the ending is real, even though Nolan himself insists the ending is meant to stay ambiguous and refuses to definitively answer it. However, Nolan himself has said the top doesn't matter. The critical detail is that Cobb walks away without watching it. In every other scene, he obsessively watches the top spin. His character arc completes when he chooses his children over his need for certainty. Whether the top falls becomes irrelevant, because Cobb has finally let go of his obsession with distinguishing dream from reality. The ambiguity is the point. Mal was right, and Cobb never left the dream. This theory claims that everything after Cobb and Mal's supposed awakening is still a dream. Evidence includes impossible action sequences, like the hallway fight in Inception, which defies physics even for a movie. Cobb's team comes together too conveniently, and obstacles resolve too perfectly. Saito appears exactly when needed with unlimited resources and connections. The real-world scenes follow dream logic more than actual logic, with chase sequences that would be impossible in reality, and authorities that vanish when inconvenient to the plot. Most damning for supporters of this idea is that Cobb's children are framed and dressed so similarly in his memories and the final scene that it creates the impression they haven't aged or changed, even though in reality, slightly older child actors. And slightly different costumes are used. If Mal performed Inception on Cobb by convincing him their dream world was fake, then she died trying to wake him up, and he's been dreaming ever since, building layers to hide from the truth she tried to tell him. Borden and Fallon were always identical twins, and according to one radical interpretation, Tesla's machine never really worked the way the characters believe. The Prestige is about misdirection, and the film misdirects its audience just as the magicians misdirect theirs. The theory argues that the Tesla machine was an elaborate hoax, and Angier never successfully cloned himself in any literal sense. In this reading, every demonstration of the machine can be seen as a failure or producing unclear results, with Angier misinterpreting what happens rather than truly duplicating himself. Angier's obsession with finding a scientific solution blinds him to the simple truth that Borden achieved his trick through sacrifice and dedication, not technology. The twins lived half-lives, sharing one existence, one love, and one career. One twin loved Sarah, the other loved Olivia, creating the inconsistent behavior that nearly exposed them. The movie reveals this twist, but fans argue the film goes further, suggesting Angier's machine created corpses or hallucinations, not functioning clones. His guilt and deteriorating sanity stem from murdering versions of himself that were never truly alive. The prestige of the film itself is making the audience believe in impossible science when the real answer was always human sacrifice. Angier clones himself successfully, but which version is the original? This theory explores the consciousness problem in The Prestige. Each time Angier uses the machine, a new version appears while one drowns. The Angier who takes the bow believes he's the original because he has continuity of experience, but the one drowning also believed he was the original. The theory suggests that consciousness doesn't transfer, meaning the real Angier died the first time he used the machine, and every subsequent performance is a clone killing another clone. Alternatively, some fans argue that the Angier in the tank survives some nights through inconsistencies in the machine's placement, and the final confrontation involves a version who escaped. The horror of the trick isn't just murder, it's existential annihilation, with each version uncertain if he'll be the one who drowns or the one who lives, and no way to know if subjective experience continues or ends with each performance. Cooper creates a bootstrap paradox and traps humanity in an infinite loop. In Interstellar, future humans build the tesseract that allows Cooper to send the quantum data back in time, which saves humanity and allows them to eventually evolve into the five-dimensional beings who build the tesseract. This is a closed causal loop with no clear origin point. The theory argues that humanity is trapped, repeating this cycle endlessly. Each iteration, Cooper enters the black hole, sends the data, humanity survives, evolves, builds the tesseract for the previous iteration, and the loop continues. Some versions of this theory suggest that different iterations produce different outcomes, with some timelines where humanity fails, creating the desperate need to manipulate past events. The Tesseract scene shows infinite iterations of Murphy's bedroom across time, possibly representing infinite loops where Cooper tries different approaches to save his daughter. If this is true, the film's hopeful ending is actually cosmic horror, with humanity unable to escape its predetermined cycle, forever dependent on manipulating its own past to survive. Future humans. They are not aliens, they are us. Interstellar strongly implies that the five-dimensional beings who created the wormhole and tesseract are evolved humans from the distant future. The film's dialogue supports this, with characters speculating that only beings who cared about human survival would help, and who else would care except humans themselves. This theory extends the implications of humanity evolving beyond three-dimensional space and linear time. Once humans exist in 5 dimensions, they perceive time as a physical dimension they can navigate like space. They reach back to ensure their own existence by saving their ancestors. This creates philosophical questions about causality and free will. If future humans must save past humans to exist, but can only exist if past humans are saved, the loop becomes self-sustaining. The theory suggests this is Nolan's ultimate statement on human survival, requiring cooperation across time itself, with our descendants literally our own saviors. Tenet is a palindrome in structure, not just title. The film's narrative mirrors itself, with the second half reversing the first. Fans have mapped scenes that correspond to their temporal inversions, showing how conversations and confrontations happen twice from different temporal directions. The opera siege at the beginning mirrors the final battle at Stalsk 12. The protagonist's recruitment mirrors his recruitment of Neil. The car chase on the highway is the structural center, the point where forward and backward motion literally collide. This theory argues Nolan constructed the entire screenplay as a temporal pincer movement, with the plot itself demonstrating the film's central concept. Some fans claim watching the film in reverse reveals additional details and dialogue that are inverted in the original viewing. The film even withholds its full title card until the very end, reinforcing the sense of a self-contained temporal loop rather than placing it at a neat midpoint. If this theory is correct, Tenet practices what it preaches, with the film's structure existing in the same kind of temporal loop as its characters, making it Nolan's most formally ambitious work. The protagonist founded Tenet and recruited Neil in his own past. This theory claims that Neil is Max, Kat's son, recruited by the protagonist years after the film's events. Evidence includes Neil's knowledge of the protagonist's preferences and his emotional goodbye, stating their friendship is just beginning for the protagonist, but ending for him. Neil moves backward through time, meaning he experiences the film's events in reverse order from the protagonist. If Neil was recruited as a young adult and then inverted his entire timeline to help his younger self, it explains his intimate knowledge of events and his willingness to sacrifice himself. The theory suggests the protagonist spends decades building Tenet after the film ends, eventually recruiting Max and sending him back, inverted, to ensure the mission succeeds. This creates another bootstrap paradox where the protagonist only succeeds because his future self sent help from the past. Some fans calculate that Max's age at the end of the film, plus roughly 20 to 30 years of aging, places him at Neil's apparent age, supporting the timeline. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I post videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help out. The black and white scenes in Memento occur after the color scenes, not before. The film presents black and white scenes in chronological order and color scenes in reverse chronology, meeting in the middle. However, this theory argues that the traditional interpretation is wrong. Evidence includes Leonard's behavior in black and white scenes, suggesting he's already well into his system of notes and tattoos, and Teddy's claims that Leonard has killed multiple people before, not just John G. The theory suggests Leonard has been manipulating himself through cycles of revenge, deliberately creating new targets after exhausting the previous one. The film's structure hides that Leonard is further along in his pattern than audiences assume. Some fans argue the entire film could be reordered into a third sequence that reveals Leonard's true timeline and the extent of his self-deception. Nolan himself has suggested the film's structure is designed to put audiences in Leonard's mental state, never quite certain what came before what, making every scene's placement potentially unreliable. Leonard knowingly manipulates himself and chooses to forget the truth. The critical line is, "I have to believe in a world outside my own mind." This theory argues Leonard knows his condition, allows him to remake reality by controlling what information he preserves. He deliberately creates false narratives through selective note-taking and tattoos. The Sammy Jenkins story is Leonard's own story, transferred to another person to distance himself from the truth that he killed his wife through insulin overdoses after the attack. Teddy reveals this, and Leonard chooses not to believe him, instead writing, "Don't believe his lies," and creating Teddy as his next target. The film shows Leonard making this choice in real time. He decides to forget Teddy's license plate information and tattoo it as his target, consciously creating a false mission. This transforms Leonard from victim to villain, someone who weaponizes his condition to justify violence while maintaining the identity of a grieving husband. The film becomes a horror story about chosen delusion and the lies we tell ourselves to remain the heroes of our own narratives. Batman survival. Bruce Wayne died in the nuclear explosion, and Alfred imagined the cafe scene. Throughout The Dark Knight Rises, Alfred describes his fantasy of seeing Bruce alive and happy at a cafe in Florence. The final scene shows exactly this fantasy coming true, which seems too perfect. Evidence supporting Bruce's death includes the autopilot fix being mentioned only in dialogue, never shown, and the extremely tight timeline for Bruce to escape the blast radius. Wayne spent the entire film with a death wish, seeking to sacrifice himself for Gotham. The bomb's timer and the bat's flight speed make survival mathematically improbable. Supporters of this theory argue that Nolan filmed Alfred's relieved smile at the cafe, then showed Bruce and Selina as Alfred's imagination, not objective reality. The scene functions as wish fulfillment for both Alfred and audiences who want a happy ending. Alternatively, some argue Bruce did survive, but the ambiguity is intentional, mirroring Inception by leaving his ultimate fate uncertain. The cafe scene lacks the grounded realism of the rest of the film, existing in a dreamlike state that suggests fantasy rather than reality. John Blake cannot actually become Batman and represents thematic continuation only. The film ends with Blake discovering the Batcave, and his legal first name is revealed as Robin. However, this theory argues Blake lacks every resource necessary to be Batman. He has no wealth, no technology access, no combat training beyond Police Academy basics, no Alfred, no Lucius Fox, and no worldwide network. Batman requires billions of dollars in equipment, years of martial arts mastery, and extensive preparation. Blake is an orphan cop with good instincts. The film suggests symbolic inheritance, not literal continuation. Blake represents Gotham having internalized Batman's values, and citizens stepping up to protect each other, which was always Bruce's goal. The Robin reveal is a metatextual joke for comic fans, not a setup for Blake to actually don the cape. Some versions of this theory suggest Blake trains for years and eventually becomes a very different street-level vigilante, but never Batman, as Bruce was Batman. The Dark Knight rises as an idea in Gotham's collective consciousness, not as a single replacement person. The Joker planned his capture and every subsequent event in The Dark Knight. Despite claiming to be an agent of chaos, the Joker demonstrates meticulous planning throughout the film. He needed to be in police custody at that exact time to access Lau and trigger the hospital explosion. The phone bomb in the large prisoner's stomach required advanced placement. He manipulated Harvey Dent's location and security. Evidence includes his unsurprised reactions to every development and his immediate pivots when plans apparently fail. He knew Batman would intervene at specific moments and planned for those interventions. The theory argues the Joker is Batman's intellectual equal, perhaps superior, and his chaos persona is itself a performance designed to make enemies underestimate him. His different origin stories serve to prevent anyone from predicting him through psychology. The interrogation scene shows him in control the entire time, giving Batman exactly enough information to make the choice between Harvey and Rachel, while ensuring both would be traumatized. Every action serves his thesis that civilization is a thin veneer over chaos, and he proves it by turning Gotham's White Knight into a murderer through pure manipulation. Harvey Dent never had free will, and Two-Face was inevitable. This theory examines determinism in The Dark Knight through Harvey's coin. Before his transformation, Harvey uses a coin with two heads, creating the illusion of chance while maintaining control. After his scarring, he uses a truly random coin, but his choices remain determined by his trauma. The Joker's philosophy wins because Harvey was always one tragedy away from breaking. Batman manipulates Harvey's final choices by restricting his options, and the coin merely provides the appearance of agency. Evidence includes Harvey's aggressive prosecution methods before becoming Two-Face, showing authoritarian tendencies and willingness to bend rules. His dramatic personality and black and white thinking made him vulnerable to seeing the world in binary terms. The theory suggests Gotham created Two-Face through its corruption. The Joker simply accelerated an inevitable outcome. And Harvey's entire character arc demonstrates that in Nolan's Gotham, good men are always destroyed by the system. Batman's survival requires becoming a symbol beyond human vulnerability, which Harvey could never achieve. The true timeline of following is deliberately obscured to hide the protagonist's guilt. Nolan's first feature film in 1998 established his obsession with unreliable narrators and non-linear structure. The film presents three timelines, distinguished by the protagonist's appearance. But the theory argues that even this presentation hides the truth. The protagonist claims he randomly follows people, but evidence suggests he targeted the blonde woman from the beginning. His involvement in the burglaries and murder may be more intentional than his narration admits. The film's structure prevents audiences from seeing his true motivations and the extent of his planning. Some fans argue that watching the film in chronological order reveals the protagonist as a willing participant in crime, not a manipulated victim. Cobb, the burglar, may be less of a manipulator than the protagonist claims, serving as a convenient scapegoat for crimes the protagonist wanted to commit. The unreliable narration and fractured timeline protect the protagonist's self-image as an innocent artist drawn into crime, when he may have sought it out deliberately. If you liked what you saw, think about subscribing to stay updated with every upload. Thanks for watching.